Okay, so we're looking at DoorDash here. DoorDash, obviously, we all know what they do. They bring you food and charge you exorbitant, crazy amounts of money for bringing you said food. Now, part of their problem that they have is that they have PCI data, they have your PII data, and obviously they've got a configuration or backend or something or another where they just don't seem to give a damn about security. Let's look at the history of their kind of issues that they face and see if we can dial in and vector in on this a bit because there's indications of what's going on here. And this is where the analysis side of the by the breach methodology comes in. So, number one, first question we should ask is, has DoorDash ever been breached in the past? The answer to that is yes. Now, let's do a little bit of Googling and figure out when that occurred. Okay, so very simply, if you go into Google or pick your favorite AI powered browser thingy, and you say, has DoorDash ever reported a breach before 2025? And remember, when we're talking about by the breach, we're talking about publicly traded companies, not private, not stuff that's not on our stock index, whatever else. This is publicly traded companies. So yes, DoorDash has had multiple reported breaches, awesome, before 2025. The most prominent ones were 2019 and 2022, specifically August of 2022. A third major breach was actually reported in 2025 after an employee was, guess what, tricked with a social engineering scam. Shocker. Maybe they don't do their phishing training there. So 2019, breach exposed the information of approximately 5 million customers. They call them dashers and merchants. The data still included what? Names, email addresses, phone numbers, and in some cases, unencrypted password addresses, and the last four digits of payment cards, which we would typically call PCI data or PII data. August 22, another breach affected some customers and drivers resulting from a social engineering attack on a third-party vendor. So third-party vendor got breached, pumps its way into DoorDash, and guess what? Exact same information again. October 25, that's right now pretty much, a third-party breach, again, was identified after an employee fell victim to a social engineering scam. So twice they've had people, or excuse me, that's three, twice they've had people that have been affected with social engineering that are vendors and third parties connecting in. So I would question their vendor third party thing. That's just my stuff. But having this happen this often, problem. So let's look at the actual dates that these were reported here and kind of see when we can get some specifics on the DoorDash breach. Now it talks about here's DoorDash's YouTube channel with what every DoorDash person should know, etc. And let's look at actually the breach analysis. And this is from Warden Shield, which I've never heard of, but okay. DoorDash disclosed its third major breach in 6 years. So they're averaging about every 2 years. Millions of usernames, emails, phone numbers, and delivery addresses were exposed. No passwords that we know of yet. Or full payment cards. Phishing and spam risks are now high. So if you use DoorDash, expect to get phishing emails and scam text and quishing, whatever the hell we call that stuff, QR code, things like that. So yeah, I don't like DoorDash because I don't like being charged $80 to get a fucking Slurpee. But there we go. So this is DoorDash's, which is America's largest food delivery platform, is notifying millions of users, about 5 million, about a new data breach, the company's third major incident in 6 years. This is the question we should be asking is how can this happen 3 times in 6 years, but different story. The breach was detected, AKA reported, in October of 2025 and is not only now reaching through the public individual email notifications because of what? SEC filing. DoorDash has not published an official blog post or SEC filing currently, which they're working through, which is an issue. So there's a question I have there, but timeline of events. On or around October 25th, 2025, unauthorized third party, someone gains access to certain DoorDash internal systems. That's not cool. Probably an IT contractor, probably MSP, service provider, etc. Late October, early November 2025, DoorDash engages a leading external forensics firm, Mandiant, or CrowdStrike, potentially. They're not named, but let's just make a logical guess here. November 11th to 13th, DoorDash begins sending data breach notifications to their customers. November 13th, 2025, first mainstream media reports shows up on Bleeping Computer and TechCrunch. November 14th, DoorDash established a dedicated support hotline, and their stuff is here. I'll throw the link in case you are a DoorDash person. So what was actually stolen? This is what we know of currently, and this has been stolen at least 3 times now by DoorDash. Full name, email address, phone number, delivery address, order history, metadata, restaurants, etc. So this is what they say was not compromised this time around. And again, I always say when people say, when I say that's kind of redundant. But anyway, whenever they tell you that this is not the thing, just wait and give it time because this is pretty knee-jerk response you typically find out. Currently, they're saying payment card numbers fully were not taken, CVV codes, the little 3-digit code on your thing, bank account numbers, social security numbers, DoorDash passwords, or driver's license. Now, a lot of that was stolen prior, so they've got it again. And if you didn't update your passwords and whatever, they got that stuff again. How did they get in? DoorDash has not disclosed the initial access vector. Sources familiar with the investigation tell Bleeping Computer that the compromise appears to have originated through a third-party software provider that DoorDash uses for customer communication and address validation, similar to the 2022 incident that rode on the Twilio breach. However, DoorDash has not confirmed this, and the company is still using phrases like, quote, an unauthorized third party in its notifications. Yeah. Now, here's a comparison with the past breaches. 2019, discovered in September of 2019, and this is all going to help us with our by the breach analysis. Just follow with me here. Root cause was a database misconfiguration. 4.9 million users affected. Data was the same stuff, PII stuff, and full credit card numbers. That's what not taken is what they say, but they did get the CVV. 2022, August 2022, root cause was phishing of a third-party vendor, Twilio. So there's that. Hundreds of thousands of users affected, same data. Full card numbers were not taken. However, CVVs were there. 25, same data, same sort of attack, same sort of compromise. Now, here's where they get into the covering their ass side of this. So real world risk this time's, quote, even though no financial data was taken, the combination of full name, phone, and exact delivery address is extremely valuable to scammers. That is also a PII violation. That is also tying into, you could reach out and say PCI, etc. So yes, there's an issue there. So expect hyper-targeted phishing and quishing and smishing, which we've come up with some weird-ass terms in this world, but whatever. Porch pirate coordination. So this is the thing that happens where people will come steal your stuff from your porch because they're getting the information before it gets to you. Doxing or swatting, probably as well. Spam call and text surges as well. Now here's DoorDash's official response. The company notification email is unusually detailed compared to past incidents. So maybe they've learned after 3 of these. It includes a direct support hotline, which I'll throw that number in there, assurance that no action is required from users who are notified. That's sketchy because if they have your username, password, all that other stuff, it's smart just to go off and change it. And enable 2FA, if you haven't done that, like do those things. I know it takes an extra 3 seconds, but turn it on. And a promise to provide what? What's the one thing we always get with these things? Free credit monitoring. Yay, that's awesome. You got my stuff stolen for a 3rd time. You've given me credit monitoring. Hooray, huzzah. So here's what you should do. Don't click links in any emails you get related to DoorDash. I'll make sure if you do go to their domain, you go to DoorDash.com because it's very easy to put a 0 where a O is and people will fall for that. Change your password right now. Turn on 2FA. Do that right now. Watch for SMS scams because they're going to come across, and make sure that you get a hold of the National Do Not Call Registry and make sure that you have spam blocking on. So now here's a point that they made in this article, but I want to read it out because it's a pretty good analysis and pretty accurate. Let's be real. That's what they said. 3 breaches in 6 years suggest a pattern, not random bad luck. I would call that negligence. I would call that ignoring best practices, etc. DoorDash's rapid expansion involving many third-party tools, excuse me, continues to widen its attack surface. Yes, more APIs, more vendors, more third-party, more growth, more means more avenues of compromise. And if you don't fix what was getting you the first time around, it's going to get worse. Competitors like Uber Eats and Grubhub have had far fewer incidents during the same period. Now, there's a bit of a twist on that. Uber's got its own issues, and Uber Eats is like a tangential thing, whatever. But business-wise, okay, I wouldn't disagree. Privacy advocates, aka idiots, in California are calling for regulatory action or CCPA. Good luck, privacy people. That's why I say idiots, because it's not that privacy's dumb. Like, we should be private, but it's kind of like you're not going to be private because the internet doesn't really work that way. But anyway, go nuts. Good luck. And according to CCPA, they could fine companies up to $7,500 per affected customer for negligent data handling. Now, here's a caveat on that is we don't have a definition of negligent data handling that is accepted across the United States. My guess would be that DoorDash is not headquartered in California. Maybe it is, but regardless, I would say good luck to them in trying to get $7,500 for all the people that were compromised. If they could, it would have happened before. Okay, so that being said, now let's look at the actual page here. So if we're looking at DoorDash, right, and we're going to go back to 2019, let's see. So there's 2021, and I'm going to go all the way back to All right, so 2019 is, let's go further back. There we go. So interesting because they didn't even go public until later on 2021. There's no data 2019 currently, which, okay, so there wasn't really an effect there. So we can kind of write that one off. Now let's step up into the 2022 August timeframe. So right here, there's July, and it's looking like, yeah, so we'll go in a little bit further because this is where we start to see some stuff. All right, so here you are in 2022. There's July. You can see their high point right there was before the incident. Excuse me. So their high point was right in that particular area. Then they have the breach. So there's 2021. Now we go forward, right? So the high point for them was way up here at 206. And that was, things were going along great for them. They'd been public for a little while. Now here's the crash that comes after. You're following along with the dip there. This is going into 2022. There's another blip coming up. And then what happens in 2022 is we have the additional breach. And here's August, September. Look at all that red, 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 red. Now, they obviously didn't have a very good response to this because this is where the by the breach sort of methodology, there are always variables in the stock market, but this is a variable in how long it took them to recover. And you can see that their low point was actually in October, and then the recovery starts to happen. Let's see, October, call it March. So about 5 months. So they had a really sucky response to this whole thing, which is what made that go longer. But their low point was way down there at $44. If you had bought at $44 after the breach, which that's, I always talk about there's kind of a 90-day rollout, right? So if the breach occurred in August, September, October, so roughly in that time frame, which is exactly where the dip is, then you see the bump begin to happen there. And then it goes all the way up to right here again, where they're at 270. So you could have bought it at 40 something bucks and 270. And now you can tell today they went from 270 down to 208. That's a pretty substantial fall, and they're not even through it yet. So, like, here you can see over time when a company wasn't even publicly traded to when they were publicly traded, where the dip occurs, where the bad thing occurs, where they fall off, going from a high of 200 bucks all the way down to 40 bucks, now all the way back up to almost 300. Let's call it 270, and they're dropping back down to 200, and they're still falling. So yes, it's a substantial buy the breach opportunity. What I would suggest here, folks, is because it doesn't look like they're going, and again, I'm not Series 7, I'm not licensed, I'm not super intelligent, I'm not telling you that this is what you should do, I'm just suggesting the math indicates that this is a thing. They're going to drop pretty substantially. My guess would be, I'm calling it with my Jim Cramer sort of whatever, that they're probably going to settle out somewhere in this like 160-ish area, so almost $100 worth of drop over the course of the next 90-ish days. You typically don't see companies go just that far down over time. Like that would be cataclysmic for them unless something else happens in the next couple of weeks, or maybe the SEC really goes after them. But I would set and again, I'm not telling you to, I'm just theoretically saying I would set your kind of buy criteria, what I'm going to do around that 160 marker. And I might even set a second buy opportunity down here about 100 and see which one works out better, and then let it ride. They'll come back. DoorDash is super popular. It's the largest delivery service in the world. They make a shitload of money off of all the fees they charge and those types of things. So there you go. This is another buy the breach opportunity, and this is prior. And here's a question we should also ask: is this is prior to them actually reporting it to the SEC? So far, it's all kind of public knowledge. The SEC side will cause another dip in that stock. So there you go. Here's the analysis. It's pretty cut and dry. 3 breaches in 6 years, all kind of along the same lines of what should have been stopped in the first place. There's obviously an issue with DoorDash around negligence and people doing configuration. And is anyone there doing security or running security? I don't know, because it sure doesn't seem like it. But this is where we can go forward. And I would suggest to you folks, if you're like me and you get sick and tired of paying crazy fees for deliveries of Slurpees, make some of your money back on the stock market right here with DoorDash. In time for the holidays, the stock should bounce up. I'm thinking because a lot of people are off work, because there's also the students being out of school and colleges being out, DoorDash stock is going to come back relatively quick. There's other external factors here. So, go off and do that and make your money on the far end. Anyway, that's just the analysis. That's the data. That's the history. Math is math is math, and you can look at this stuff and do your own predictions. I'm using Yahoo Finance here. There's a whole bunch of other tools, but pick which one you're going to use and then go forward. But you could make, if you had bought this at their low from that 2022 breach at about $40, and you had sold it at their high when they, kind of typically topped out. So if their high before was 206, if you bought it at 44, that's a really nice return. And you would have made a bunch of money. And if you only had bought, I don't know, 100 shares, that's a pretty substantial return. So there you go. So there's your buy the breach on DoorDash, do the thing, make the money, be smart, never invest more than you can lose. And again, I am not a financial advisor. I'm not licensed. I'm not telling you to do this stuff. I'm just saying that you could. And the math and the data and the research tell us that this is accurate and correct. So thank you very much. And we'll do more.